This scar right here, I got this one. I used to go with this dude named Smokey, and I think one night he wanted my money or something. It had to be over some money. And I wouldn't give him my motherfucking money that I had went home for, and he got mad. And so when he got ready to run up on me, I popped my knife. And so when I popped my knife, he went down the street and come back with this board. And as soon as he walked up on me, he just swung and hit me. And then I fell out, I passed out. And when I woke up, I was in the motherfucking emergency room. But I didn't get it stitched up or nothing. This one right here, he busted me in my face. He hit me in my face with his fist and busted it open, and I had stitches. Oh, I got all these scars on my lips from Smokey beating me up all the time. And
so I realized that this stuff needs to be compressed, otherwise it's not going to explode. So I take the pipe in my left hand, and it's about 4 inches long, and it's maybe a ½ inch wide, and it's full of match heads. And I grab an extension off of a ratchet, and I start compressing it like this a little bit, and I'm thinking, this is just not going to cut it. It's not going to be compressed enough. I really need it packed. So I hold the pipe with these fingers and put the ratchet down in here, and I'm holding it like this with no brain cells in my head, no thinking. I take a hammer, and I go, bang! As soon as it exploded, I realized I had done something terribly wrong. From my wrist down, I felt I didn't even look at it. I felt absolutely nothing. Tools that had been on the wall in front of me were now laying on the table and on the floor around me. I knew I lost my hand. I knew it had blown off. I mean, I felt nothing.
So then I went into nursing, and it seemed like every year or so after I was doing floor nursing, my hips would give out and I would have to have more surgeries. At 19, 21, 24, and 27, I had hip replacements put in. The doctor said, you're going to have to quit doing floor nursing. So I gave up my nursing.
Then I got to the hospital, and we went into like a little room, and I laid on a table, and they had to like clean it out and give me shots and stuff to numb it so that they could sew it up. And it took them like 2.5 hours or maybe longer. And when he was done, there was like between 50 and 60 stitches.
I just remember kicking the dog and taking off running. And then I remembered the dog caught up to me, and the dog was chewing on my leg, and just kept chewing on my leg. I had this jacket on that had real thick pad, like on the arms. I stuck my arm out and got him to chew on my arm, and got him off of my leg because the pain was so bad. And I didn't know where the cop was. I'm like, hey, get this dog off of me. Hey, get this dog off of me. And there was nobody there. And I remember saying, hey, I give up, whatever it is. At this point, this guy's psycho. This cop's gonna kill me. You know, I'm giving myself up. He's gonna kill me. That's what was going through my mind. It was the most terrifying thing that ever happened to me in my life. Next thing I remember, I was in handcuffs, and they were dragging me across the ground through the street.
2 months later, they took me out of the ICU ward and stuck me in the open ward for another couple of months. During that time, in order for me to grow the natural color and skin back to my lips, they would, each time feeding came, they would peel the scabs off, both the top and bottom part of my lip. And in order for it to heal and grow new skin. And during that time, I was being fed through a tube on the corner of my mouth.
It was 1 minute plunging my hand in, feeling a sensation of pain, and then being unable to move, and then it seemed like maybe a minute or a minute and a half later pulling my hand out. And I can remember having a very deep, I can only call it an adult emotion, very deep from inside, from the stomach level, that this is wrong. There's something very much wrong with what you're looking at. And as I continued to look around, I noticed that it was much darker than it was when we went outside, which was somewhere about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock in the morning. And now it was almost sunset. It was very dark outside, and I looked to where my brother and sister were, they were gone. And there was no way that I could have been standing there for that long and not have some memory of the amount of time that passed, but I have none.
I was upset because I was separating, and I thought I had this really terrible life, you know, and I'd lost my husband. And I remember I was driving and I was semi-crying when this happened. And when this girl hit me, when my car turned, I knew that my life was kind of shifting too. The left car door ended up in by the passenger seat. It had slammed to my left hip. It was just a nightmare. I was in so much pain from all the loss that had taken place in my life. My HMO sent me to a doctor, and he convinced me I needed to have my hip replaced again. In my mind, I thought maybe I could kind of will death during this surgery because it's such a traumatic thing. I'm usually going through these surgeries are like 8 to 9 hours long. And I just thought, you know, maybe I could just die. Maybe it's time to just die.
After I was all torn up, my leg was all torn up in this combine, I spent 90 days in the hospital, the Veterans Hospital in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And it was a difficult thing, the leg propped up and operation after operation and all this and that. And it was quite boring and I hated it. Everybody hated it. My wife and my 2 little children hated it. So one day I decided I'm going out of there. And the nurse said, well, how are you going out of here? I said, the day that I can walk 50 feet down that hall on my crutches, I'm going home. She says, well, we won't give you your clothes. I said, I don't care. Clothes, they were none but old rags anyway. I'll go right out that door and get a taxi and I'm going home. So I went home and I worked real hard at trying to revive myself and revitalize myself. And a few years later, I won my flight in the state championship golf tournament in Butte, Montana.
And then I remember being in a hospital bed, in a room in the hospital, chained to the bed with a 24-hour guard, armed guard, sitting in a chair right next to me. And I remember coming to there next and asking him why was I even there in the first place. He said, oh, I don't know the story, I just know that these are the charges. And there was at least 8 felony charges of assault on a police officer. What it came down to was he said, I wrestled him to the ground and took his gun from him and tried to shoot him. So I thought, oh geez, this is what he's got to say, right? I mean, look at what he did to me. I got a broken wrist, my legs shredded to pieces. You know, of course he's gonna lie to cover his ass because that's what they do.
When I was 5, my mother would have her poker games, and during one of their breaks, she would always call me in there during her breaks and say, Teresa, show them your scar. And I was standing there resentfully looking at my mother like, do I have to, you know? And she goes, go show them your scar. And I'll open my mouth, but I won't stick my tongue out. And my mother goes, no, stick out your tongue so they can see. And I can feel these tears build up because I was so ashamed and so embarrassed. I mean, this was like a routine deal that was happening every time she would play her card game with her friends. And I would stand there and then I would go ahead and stick out my tongue and they're all, you know, gaping and staring. And
I was so overwhelmed that I couldn't talk to my brother or sister. And I remember my brother asking me why you were standing outside so long. What were you doing out there? And I guess several hours had passed because it became dark very quickly. I can remember looking outside and thinking, this cannot be explained. I have no memory of it. And I had talked to a doctor, and he had looked at it and told me that you could not have a scar like this without having some memory of it because it's some very serious damage has been done to your hand.